All right. Welcome, everyone. We are AEP. My name is Emma.
And my name is Joar.
And we welcome you to today's talk about productivity.
But first, I think it's important to introduce ourselves, who we are. So, as Emma said, we are AEP, Association of Esports Psychology. And basically what we do is sports psychology or general psychology applied towards esports, gamers, and game development. So more specifically, as you can see here, we have 5 pillars that we stand on. We have performance, we do research in sports psychology, we have a media page where we do on LinkedIn, we do on X, on Instagram, where we spread our knowledge. We also work with society, NGOs, and governmental organizations, and we work as a grassroots level as well. Okay, so today we're going to talk about what motivation is, internal versus external motivation, how to internalize motivation, and how to make more engaging games. So, what is productivity and well-being? Do we have any answers from the crowd? I'll take that as a no. So, Emma, what is productivity and well-being?
Okay, so productivity is the amount of work stuff gets done in time. Okay? And well-being is the presence of positive emotions and mood and the absence of negative emotions. Satisfaction with life and fulfillment and positive functioning.
Yeah, that's about it. So what is motivation then, Emma?
So when we talk about motivation, we talk about direction, intensity, and perseverance. So direction is where we're going. The intensity is how hard we're going for the direction we're going, and perseverance is how long we persevere, how long we stay in the direction and how much intensity we put into the direction.
Yeah, so when we're talking about motivation, it's important to note that you're not equally motivated towards all things. Motivation has to be directed at something. It could be developing games, it could be playing games, it could be composing certain part of the games, but not another part. So we're always talking about a certain direction. Then you can have more or less motivation, so you could be very motivated or not motivated at all. And you can stick with the behavior, as Emma said, for a long time, which means that you're very motivated, or you can stick with it for a couple of days or a week, which means that you're not that motivated. Okay, great. So, Emma, what is the origin of motivation, or how would you describe motivation?
Okay, so we can kind of develop motivation a bit more. So we have external motivation, and we have internal motivation, and we also have A motivation. So keep it simple. A motivation is basically no motivation. I have no motivation in this. I don't have the direction. I don't have the intensity. But then to make it a little bit more complicated, you can divide motivation into internal and external motivation. So external motivation is that you're reaching for something. You have to do something. It's negative, but we'll start with I want something. So it can be a prize. It could be to actually develop this game to get money, to get an investor. Or you can be externally motivation by I have to. So I have to do this to get my salary. Or I have to do the dishes because otherwise my husband will be mad. Okay? On the other hand, the internal motivation it comes from the inside. So the means is the goal. So you do something to kind of get this feeling of fulfillment, enjoyment, to have fun.
Yeah. We're having some technical issues, so just bear with us.
We'll go. Okay.
Okay, so Emma, what are the pros of internal motivation? Why shouldn't you just have external motivation?
So the thing with internal motivation is that to get this, to kind of go where we're going, the goal, we put more effort in if we are internally motivated. So if we're only motivated by money or prizes or becoming the best of the team, as soon as we start to compare ourselves with someone else, it's not within our control. But if we are internally motivated, I want to feel joy, I want to complete this to get this feeling of fulfillment, I tend to put more effort in. And it also improves well-being and mental health. So it's more of our control, which is really good.
Yeah, and what you see is that when companies and people have internal motivation as opposed to external motivation or a motivation, is that you get less absenteeism, so less people being sick and coming to work when they're half sick and performing worse, and you get lower turnover rates, which means that you can have the same personnel for longer times, which means less onboarding and more focus on performance. So one example we can have here is just an example. It's not like a real example, it's just a fictive example, is that if we look here at the chart, we can see in January, we have a company, let's say, that starts. Their motivation goes up. In May, the motivation continues to go up. October, January, but then around May the next year, something happens. And what happens is that their motivation kind of stops. So instead of them performing better all the time and developing, getting better, they kind of peak here around May, and then they just perform a little better, a little worse, a little better, and then up and down. But what happens if they were motivated all of the time instead of just for a year? What we could get is this. We have a team here that starts out very low in the performance metrics, as you can see on the y-axis. But then they keep their motivation. So what happens is they keep on trying, they keep on giving effort, so their performance goes up and up and up and up. And at May the next year, it continues to go up. So what we can see here is an example of how important motivation is. Because if you're not motivated, you're not going to try. If you're not trying as much, you're not going to improve. And this is just an example of 3 years. But this also happens 4 years, 5 years, 6 years. So it's very important to have motivation, so you keep on giving effort, you keep on trying, and you keep on performing better. So here you can see that 2 different examples overlapped. So what you can see here with the motivation example, with the motivated team, they keep on performing better, and at around January, May, they've reached the other team's cap. So the other team can't perform as well, even if they were motivated. So what we want you to ask yourself or reflect about is, who are you in this example? Are you the motivated team who has kept on being motivated, or are you the first team who has been motivated in the start but kind of gone down? Who would you like to be? Who would you like your staff or your colleagues, your co-workers to be? And then ask yourself, what have you done to improve your motivation and the staff or co-workers' motivation? So that's something we want you to think about. So Emma, how do you make motivation more internal?
So there are 3 different categories, you can call them, if you want to show them. We have competence, relatedness, and autonomy. So to kind of, like I was talking about, to kind of make this internal, you want to take control and you want to know, how do I increase this internal motivation? So you do this by these 3 categories. So I'm going to go through them. So competence is the feeling of you being good. You have the competence, you have the knowledge to kind of execute this task. It can also be that you feel like you are improving in what you're doing. Relatedness is that you have meaningful relationships. So this social network at work or in the team, that you have this social support that helps the internal motivation. And autonomy, that feeling that you are deciding your own actions. So you can have a long-term goal with the team, but you can kind of decide how to get there. So to kind of leave the planning to each employee.
So basically what this means is that when you're in an environment where you feel like you're good at what you're doing, or you feel like you're continuously progressing, you're going to like it more. When you go to work and you feel like you have meaningful relationships with your coworkers, you're going to like working there more than if you were to hate your coworkers. Makes sense, right? And if you're free to make your own choices, if you're not micromanaged all of the time, and you're free to expand, you're free to create new ideas, to try your new ideas instead of being controlled, your motivation is going to be more internal. But how can we apply this in practice? So let's start with competence. How do we improve competence?
So it comes with, first of all, it comes with experience. So the more you've done something, the more you feel like you're in control of the task. But something that you can do today is to set goals. Okay? So if you set goals for yourself, you kind of take control of what you're doing and you can see the progress of your own development. It also leads to encouragements. So this you can do like personally, but you could also do it within the team.
Yeah, and if we put this in a game perspective, what is most games about? It's about having a goal. It's either about having a quest, having a boss that you're supposed to beat, or something like that. You have a frame of reference. Without a frame of reference, you're not knowing if you're improving. Like if you were to have no boss, no XP bars, no stats in the game, you would have no idea if you were improving or not. So it's important to have a reference point. And what happens when we level up? What happens when we beat a boss? We usually get better stats, or we get better equipment, or we get new skins or something like that. And what is that in reality? That's encouragement. Like you do something that's hard, and when you've done it, you get encouragement by getting new stats, new equipment, you unlock new levels, or whatever it is. And it works the same way in real life. Like if you set goals for yourself, you beat the goals and then you encourage yourself by doing something that you like, or maybe just beating the goal is encouragement in itself. You're going to be more motivated, you're going to feel competent, and it's going to continue. But if you beat yourself down, or if your coworkers or if your boss is rude towards you when you complete your goals, like in a game perspective, if you were to just beat the boss and then you hit the second stage and just insta-die or something like that, it's not that fun. So you have to have encouragement.
And just to add quickly, as we said in the beginning, one of the components of motivation is direction. So goal setting, like if you set goals, that gives you a direction. So goals and motivations are really good friends. So yeah, set goals.
Yeah. So how do we improve autonomy?
Through empowerment. Okay. So autonomy, it depends on like what team you're working in. But the feeling of making your own choices, you have the big goals with the team and you have like the direction where you're going, but to kind of leave the decisions to each team member helps the autonomy.
Yeah, so an example of this in games to illustrate how important autonomy is. Like, what's the most hated mission in games? For a lot of people, it's the escort missions, where you have to wait for some random NPC that's slow and you have to walk around. Why is that boring? It's because you don't have autonomy. You have to wait for that person. You don't even want to do the quest because it's super boring. You run ahead, then the person your escort dies, so you have to restart, and it just sucks. And that's about autonomy. So when we give people the power, we give them the knowledge and the ability to create their own decisions and do what they want. You get more fun games, and you also get a more motivating environment. Like one of the biggest games lately is Elden Ring. And what is Elden Ring if not a completely autonomous game? Like you can run around, you can do whatever. The classes aren't that set, so you can try different items, you can just go straight to the boss, you can just run around for ages and just explore. Like it's a very autonomous game, and that's why it's so fun. So you have to create that environment with your personnel, give them the power, give them the knowledge so they can make their own decisions and be successful. And if you do that, you don't have to micromanage, and you can spend more time doing what you want instead, which is also important. Lastly, how do we improve relatedness?
It's basically to improve relationships. So you have to take care of the team, like actually care, ask questions, work with teamwork, and get to know each other, I would say.
Yeah, and one good example of this in gaming is the toxicity that you just talked about last time. Like one of the most popular games at the moment is League of Legends, and everybody who's played League of Legends know how toxic that community is. I have a bunch of friends that have stopped playing League, me included, because the community is so toxic. So that's an example of how important relatedness is. Because when relatedness is low, when you don't feel like you have meaningful connections, where you don't like the people you're playing with, playing sucks. But in games where you play together, where it's fun, where it's collaborative, you feel like you make friends, you have fun, the games are much more fun. So relatedness is a very important aspect. And the same is about work. We had the pandemic now a couple of years ago, and what happened as a result was remote working, like people started working at home instead. And if you don't have good relatedness in your company, people don't want to come to work, they just want to be at home, but then you have no real connectedness. Cooperation is harder. So without relatedness, people just want to stay at home. They don't really like the company. They don't like working there. But if you have good relatedness, and that doesn't mean that you have to be the best of friends, but if you like the people that you're working with, it's going to be a lot more fun working there. Yeah, so my competence is pretty low right now because it's not working, so yeah. Okay, so Emma, what do we want the people to do?
I want you guys to take like a couple of seconds just to kind of reflect on one of these different like categories. So pick one, either competence, relatedness, or autonomy, one of them that you want to work more on, like reflect upon. So if you pick competence, after this session, you might want to set a goal. You can talk to us and we can help you set goals. If you want to improve relationships at work, who are you going to talk to tomorrow maybe, or are you going to call someone after this? And autonomy, is there anything that you can improve? Maybe you have to talk to your boss, talk to your colleagues. Is there anything that you can take control of and do something about?
Yep.
Maybe.
So that was us. Thank you for listening. And if you're interested, you can scan this code to connect with us as AEP, or you can just chat us up if you see us around. Thank you, guys.